Welcome to WarDocs 10 Good Minutes on Leadership series. In these episodes, we speak with leaders across the spectrum of military medicine to explore their thoughts, insights, and lessons learned on the unique privilege of leadership.
Welcome to WarDocs 10 Good Minutes on Leadership. I'm your host, Major General Retired Jeff Clark, and our guest is Brigadier General Retired Bill Bester. General Bester had a truly remarkable 32-year career, led at every level, and his service was highlighted by being our 21st Chief of the Army Nurse Corps. I'll just share with you on a personal note for those of us who've had a chance to serve with Bill and know General Bester. He's a mentor, he's a role model, and he's just a remarkably good friend. Bill, welcome to WarDocs.
Jeff, thank you, and great to see you again.
It's good to see you, Bill. That's the first question. Let's talk a little bit about leadership philosophy. Could you summarize your leadership philosophy and maybe one or two principles that guide how you lead?
I think the basic principles I've worked off of, there's about a handful of principles that I've tried to stay focused on a daily basis during my leadership responsibilities. One of those was removing barriers. I've always looked at leadership as our leadership role is to remove barriers for those who are working for us and for the patients that we care for. And early on in my career, Jeff, I experienced somebody who was a really pretty significant micromanager. So I had an agreement with all the folks that worked for me over the years that I let them know right up front that I wasn't going to micromanage them. But if they had an issue that they couldn't resolve at their level, I really wanted them to come forward to me as early as possible. And I could help work through some of those barriers that maybe, were preventing them from getting done what they needed to get done. Another big principle that I think is really important to remember is that in all the organizations you and I have worked in the AMED throughout the years, there's just an unbelievable amount of talent and expertise and experience. Early in our careers, when we start out in our clinical areas and we're young into our careers after a year or two, we're pretty expert in our areas. But then as we move up the leadership ladder and our areas of responsibility continue to broaden, we're no longer the expert in all those areas. And I think it's important to capitalize on all those great resources that we have around us to help us make good decisions in our leadership role. And the other thing I think I've always felt strongly about is that we should never make decisions without including those who are going to be impacted by those decisions. There's two big benefits of that. First of all, if you include those folks, they will be asking you questions about, have you thought of this? Or did you think of that as you're walking through this process? And it may be information that you hadn't thought about. So that may save you from maybe heading down a wrong road because they are making you aware of some things that maybe you hadn't thought about. And the second advantage to that is when you get to the point of implementation, because they've been part of the decision-making process, you normally almost always have buy-in from those people. The other key element that I felt very, very strongly about is I'm a guy that really felt like you had to walk around, talk to people, and meet people within the organization. And I'll use my example. I was a deputy commander for nursing in 4 organizations, and then I commanded a hospital beyond that. I made 2 sets of rounds every day. In the morning, I would make a set around 5:30 in the morning, get around, talk to the night shift, and just kind of get to know those people. I was very interested in their personal lives and their professional lives and their backgrounds. After a while, Jeff, you develop this level of trust with those people that they will be very candid and very honest with you about what's going well and maybe what's not going well. So that allows you then as a leader to focus on the things you really need to focus on and not waste your time on stuff that's already working very well. And then in the afternoon, I always had my secretary block me for an hour every day to make rounds within the hospital. And of course, depending on your calendar that day, it might be at 9 in the morning, noon, 3:30 in the afternoon. But what I did during those sets of rounds was I got around to the clinics and the wards, and I talked to patients and their family members. And I'd sit down maybe with a mom with a couple of her kids in the family practice clinic, and I'd say, have you been happy with the care you're receiving here? Did you have any trouble making an appointment? Were you treated well at the front desk? And just asking her. And what usually I ended with this question. I ended with the question of, if you were sitting in my chair, would you do anything differently to enhance the quality of care that we provide to the patients here? So by using those kind of mechanisms, I really got a wealth of information from the people that worked in the organization, from the patients that received their care in the organization, to help me as a leader prioritize where I had to spend my resources and my energies.
So, Bill, let's talk about a difficult leadership challenge. Can you tell us about a challenge that you had as a leader and then how you led through that?
The one that comes to mind very quickly is a situation that I had in 1994. I got signed over to Würzburg, Germany, with the 67th Combat Support Hospital. And they had been alerted that if something should happen in the Balkans as far as peacekeeping, that they would be the medical unit supporting the initial movement of troops into the area. That went on from the time I got there in 94 till late 95, when we received a deployment order with less than 24 hours notice, 2 weeks before Christmas. We loaded up on rail cars. The next day, the deployment order came in about 3 in the afternoon. We were loaded up by noon the next day. And we spent 2 days on a train because we took low priority on the European rail, and got into a small little town in Hungary, Tazar, Hungary, which was an old Russian big base that had been closed for about 5 years. And so our challenge was to keep people motivated to do the work they needed to do when it was only 2 weeks until Christmas and they were, at the last minute yanked from their family. And what we found is that we were so busy with getting the hospital up, getting things ready, working with the Corps and their expectations of us, that we actually worked very quickly through the holidays, and the holidays were done before we knew it. And folks were really focused and really busy enough that they didn't give much thought to not being home during that time. So I think the timing of it before Christmas, because it was so close to Christmas, actually worked out to an advantage to us, because we were so busy that it just let us work right through the holidays. That deployment was an open-ended deployment with no date established. People were concerned about when they might return home. And the way we dealt with that is we had daily briefs with the entire group to give them the information we had from that day from Corps. And that seemed to satisfy people and keep everybody focused on our mission.
That's a wonderful lesson for all of us, right? Just let people know what you know so they can process it and do something with it. Yeah. So again, Bill, you're a proven leader and a mentor for so many of us. Can you talk a little bit about mentorship and its role in the development of military medical professionals?
Well, I think, Jeff, that mentorship is a key responsibility of all leaders. And, you and I both have had wonderful mentors throughout our careers. For me, I mean, my best mentors probably were my parents. I grew up in a great family, and they set the pace and let me know about life and responsibilities. But I think, you have a large amount of mentors who all of them are very effective. But the three that I remember most were all at the same time. But I remember being a brand new nurse at Madigan Army Medical Center, straight out of school, worked the PACU for a couple months, and then got reassigned to the intensive care unit. Back in those days, there was no specialty course. I got over to this intensive care unit one day with 6 patients on ventilators, 4 of them being dialyzed, an environment that I was pretty uncomfortable with, to be honest with you. And I had 3 senior civilian nurses, all 3 of them had 30 plus years of critical care experience, put their arms around me and tell me that, Lieutenant, I know this all looks very overwhelming right now, as it did to us too 35 years ago. And we're going to get you through this. And they did. And I have never forgotten that. And I really thank them, because I think if they had gone the other way, I may not have stayed certainly in the Army, and I may not have even stayed in the profession. So I do think that mentorship is a real key responsibility for leaders. And for me personally, Jeff, I always met in every leadership position with every direct hire for a professional development overview. Where do you want to be in 2 years? Where do you want to be in 5 years? Where do you want to be in 10 years? Let me tell you what you need to do to get there, from a military education, civilian education, and an assignment perspective. And I had many people come back to me many times and thank me for that, because I think that clear guidance to people is really necessary so people understand what they need and when they need it.
Yeah, Bill, that's wonderful. That's very hands-on, interpersonal, reaching out and getting to know your people and spending time with them, which is you and I have benefited from that. So thank you for that. And then I guess as we close, I'll just ask if you could go back and change one thing about a leadership decision or something that you did, if you would share that with us. And then the follow on to that is, what piece of advice would you leave with military medical professionals today?
I think for me, I wasn't quite inquisitive enough in my formative years, lieutenant captain years. Those are great years. People expect you to learn during that time in your career. So they're very open to you asking them questions. And it's a great opportunity for you to get as much information as you can. I think I did a good job on the clinical side. I asked a lot of questions. I was fortunate enough to work in the critical care unit. So I had a lot of medical and surgical specialties that I could ask questions of. I think where I missed it a little bit, as I shorted myself, was in the Army area. Learning about Army doctrine and learning about Army structure. And I probably didn't get that information until some years later, only because I didn't ask for it. So the guidance I would give new officers is ask as many questions as you can in your young years, because there's a ton of resources available to you, and it's a great learning process.
Thank you for sharing that. That's a lesson for all of us. And so our WarDocs guest for 10 good minutes has been Brigadier General retired Bill Bester. I'll ask that you visit WarDocsPodcast.com to learn more about this extraordinary leader, read his full bio, and you can see pictures from during his remarkable career. Bill, thank you for being our guest on WarDocs 10 Good Minutes. And I thank you and your family for your decades of leadership to our nation.
Thanks to you, Jeff, and good to see you again.
Yeah. Thank you all for joining us. May God bless.
Thank you for tuning in to WarDocs 10 Good Minutes on Leadership series. We hope you found today's insights valuable and inspiring. To stay connected with Team WarDocs, visit our website at wardocspodcast.com. Follow us on social media for updates, and subscribe to our WarDocs YouTube channel for more engaging content. Your support helps us continue to document the experiences and contributions of military medicine professionals as we honor the legacy and preserve the history of military medicine for the next generation.